And this is our Design Shop Talk for today. If you give me a minute to get the live feeds up on my other monitor, that way I can see what questions you might have, and then we'll kind of go, I'll restart, because just give me 1 second. All right, there's that one. Come on, Facebook. Look live. Today. If you give me a minute. All right, so I got Facebook up, and let's go get YouTube. There's YouTube. Gotta mute it too. Okay, excellent. All right, so I've got the 2 live feeds up. If you have questions, please feel free to type them into the comments, and I'll see if we can get them answered. I know this week was an exciting week. We had V11 went live, and so I'm actually running version 11 here. I guess I wanted to talk briefly about I was part of the beta tester team. And beta testing, if you're not familiar with that, it's kind of as it's being developed, you get releases of the software to run through it and put it through its paces, find what works, what doesn't work, and give feedback for Melco to go about fixing it. So that's kind of what the beta testing was. It's been going on for quite a while. They put a lot of neat features into it that I'm having a lot of fun with. Is Melco calling me? No, Texas is. Texas can wait. All right. So hopefully the feeds are up and running. It looks like some of you are here. So I did get some questions. I did want to kind of just talk briefly. I've started running V9 and then V10, and now I'm running V11. And some of the things that I noticed coming from it is it's pretty seamless. So if you haven't, once you do the upgrades, you download the file, you do the install. I actually joked that I was going to do the install live for y'all today if I got no questions, just to have something to be able. Hello in South Carolina, Margaret. Welcome. But figured it's probably not the most fun watching the little bar go across. Takes a few minutes. You can activate your license code, and then from there, any of the files you can open. So like I said, I've been doing DesignShop since version 9, so you can open up the files directly in here and they just work. Now keep in mind, if you make no changes to it, it doesn't regenerate any of the stitches, nothing like that. It's just there, and you can modify it, send it to your machines and sew it. It's seamless of how it all works. All right, so I guess I'll start with questions that I got ahead of time, and then if you guys have things you want to talk about, type them in. I know we had some requests for some demos of some of the new features, so I'll go for that as well. So one of those was, hey, can you demo the stippling, and how does that work? So let's go look at it. Let me go open my file. Hey, good morning. All right, so let's see. I've got stippling. So I've got this heart. So I was going to do it a few different ways just so you can see it. So with the stippling, how that would work is you'd come over to your complex fill, change your stitch type to stippling, and then from here you can draw a shape. So if you want to draw your own shape, great. Whatever you want, draw it, hit enter to close the shape. If you want to add a hole to it, you go ahead and add any holes by left clicking and right clicking, hit enter. And then when you're done adding holes, you can add more if you want. I'm just going to add the one. So I want to go past that step. Now you give it a start point, a stop point, and a stitch direction. And what you end up with is a cool little stippling. So this is great for if you're doing your own quilting, where you want, or if you're doing like a reverse monogram where you want the towel to pop through and you want to kind of tamp down the rest of the things. So it's a lot of fun doing it. You can adjust. Stop it, hit escape to get out of there. Now, if you want to adjust it, you can change the density, and that is what you use to kind of change how it looks on the screen. So you can make it more dense where it packs the stippling closer together, giving you more coverage, or larger where it spreads out for you. Okay, now if you have a vector, so let's say you want to do it where you're not drawing your own shape, so you've got some sort of vector, well, you can do it a few ways. You can just go change the element type. Okay, so how I did that is you can either double click on it, right click, and go to operations, change element type, you can convert it over to a complex fill. So let's say I want to add a complex fill. So that's cute, but it's a fill, right? And I had the stitch type as stippling, so here we go. Get it off the vector so you can actually see it. There is my stippling. Okay. So it's a really fun and neat way to get some quick, really pretty patterns down there. Now, one thing I did want to show, just because I love them so much, is all these decoratives. So keep in mind, in addition to doing stippling, you can always go and create your own decoratives or use some of these. There's a lot of new fun ones that you can do different patterns within your shape and do all kinds of fun stuff. Okay, so you've got that. There's some bubbles. I think it's called pebbles. Yeah. So that one's also kind of fun. I like that one a lot. So, you know, you can do some fun stuff. Let's see, any questions so far? Good morning. Peggy, Joe, Anita. Hey, Scott's on. All right. So that's the stippling. That was one of the first questions we had. Let's see, what else did we have? Can you do blends with more than 2 colors? Yes, you can. It does take a little bit of finesse to it. And on YouTube, we've got J&B Design Co. Welcome in Virginia. All right. So colors. Let's go open a file we got ahead of time. Yeah, the decorative stitches by far are some of my favorite things ever. I love them. I did actually with this stippling. Let me back up a second because it was fun. You can actually do stippling on text. All right, this is not a very bold letter. I'm gonna make it big. Let's see. Let's find a chunkier font. Block 2 is chunky. Where is it? Okay. Wake up. There we go. So you can also change the stitch types to stippling on lettering, which is, again, fun. This has underlay that I need to turn off. But yeah, the stippling is a really versatile little feature there. All right, so coloring, doing blends of more than one color. So yes, it's something you can absolutely do. And it really comes down to looking at your different colors and making sure you have enough colors with the different saturation levels to get a good blend. There is an excellent set of videos and articles that we'll try to get posted in the comments for you. So we'll get those answered. But so you can review those documents to see what different advice. But here we've got this little example, and what you can see is if you just look at my colors, oops, let me minimize them, that there's a set of colors that are just slightly off from the main rainbow down here. Okay, and you literally would want to go forward and build that as your base layer. So these are all just fills, kind of not super dense. If you look at them, it's 5 points somewhere in there. And that gives you your base foundation. So then from here, now you can add the actual blends, right? So you can come back and add these other shapes. So if I turn off, let me go back to turning these all off and let's look at the actual blends. So you'll see here, that takes the color and blends it across those two solid colors that were done before. It's tighter with the color in the middle to kind of cover up that seam, and then it feathers out. And if you look at it, your properties of when you generate it, to do a blend, you would double click on your shape, go into the effects and turn on your custom density, and you can set it to be convex. And what that's going to do is make it have more thread in the middle, less thread on the end. You can change your densities here, but that's what covers up that seam between those first sets that we did. And you just kind of build your way through it. So you can see if I just turn on these second sets of colors, let's ignore the outlines. Okay, so that's the blend across there. So it's really simple to do. You just go take the shape that you want, go change its properties, tell it to be a blend under the effects, and line it up so that it goes through there. Now, whenever you're doing blends, one of the things that you want to do is make sure you test them, that your colors are blending through. It can be a little bit of a exciting feature or exciting time to go through and do all your testing. And also make sure your stitch directions are in the same way. So if you've got one blend with a stitch direction going vertical or one fill going vertical, the next going horizontal, it's not going to blend, because you need those threads to kind of nest together to give you that visual look. Okay, I'm going to quick troll the comments to make sure there's no questions so far that I missed. All right, so I don't see any. All right, awesome. So that would be doing blends. Now, if you're not familiar with them, so under here you've got these custom shapes, this custom shape tool, and here there's all kinds of things that you can look through. And there's blends in here. So if I go look at closed designs right here, so there's a filled shaded rectangle. If you're not sure where to start as far as setting your properties for blends, go pull this one. So you can take it, add it to your screen, and it gives you a foundation to play with. You can delete the border, study the properties for all the different blends, sew it out, see what works and doesn't work for your particular application. But that's another way that if you don't know where to start, start with that and dissect it. Let's see. There's a question that was asked regarding these down here. Would you use underlay on the first set of stitches? Absolutely. So because those are all just open fills, you want to go ahead and make sure you've got your underlay, everything's nice and stable. There was on that front, there is a question that comes a little bit later about underlay that's asking, what are these things here, these new types? Okay, so you can see there under type you have user defined. So when you turn on auto, that's when that box appears. All right, so if I turn on auto, user defined is where you set up, this is how it's always been without this type. So before, when you set on auto, there was a box with 3 dots that was from B10. Now we have this new field. So this allows you to click on that and go set up your fills to be whatever it is you want it to be. Okay, but let's say you're new to this, don't quite know what underlays you want, but you're going to be sewing on a quilter's cotton. Okay, a quilter's cotton is a lightweight material, so you can choose that and hit apply. So let me go write some text so that we can actually see what this is doing for us. And I'm going to make it bigger. It'll make it easier to see. And take it off of 3D. And the only reason I'm doing this is so we can see the underlay. So let's make it a color. All right, I'm going to zoom in. There. I can't really see it on the screen. Can you guys see that? Yeah. So, all right, you can see the underlay here. So if I go to properties, you can double click on it to get your properties, right click. Under your underlay, I can say light and hit apply. And it's going to change all the underlay. You see how it changed the properties of it? Depending on the size of your element, it's going to add, more or less. But that's going to be a light underlay that you'd use for like a lightweight fabric, like a basic quilter's cotton. Whereas if you're sewing on a PK or something a little heavier, all right, well then you can use a medium fabric. Well, let's say you want to sew on a sweatshirt. Heavier, you need more underlay to make sure it's nice and stable, that your design's not shifting. Well, you can go ahead and tell it to be heavy. So that kind of just allows you to dial in your underlays based on the material. Now, if you're a seasoned user, you can always turn off auto and set the underlay to whatever you want. But I use auto all the time, and I've been doing this for a long time because the auto works really well. So let's see, we've got some more questions that were typed in. Let me quick look at them. Is there a file that has all the fonts in one so you can stitch them out without having to do each one? No, but you can go over here and say print all and save it as a PDF. That's what I do. So I print all, and then instead of printing it to paper, I save it as a PDF. Let's see, what other questions? What's the difference from the blend box versus custom density? Okay, so let me go down to, let's make a fill and look at that. Okay, I'll make a new file, make a fill, there. I don't like that color. All right, so I've got a basic fill, and if I go to properties, and the question was blend fox versus custom density. All right, so custom density is just going to take what's there and apply a, ooh, that's not what I wanted to do. It's going to apply the density going from light to thick. Light to thick, dense, there we go. Open to more dense. So it's going to take your density and run it between here. You can change it to be different properties, and you can see how that blend is changing based on what I've selected. And keep in mind, you can always play with it, which I like doing this. Typically when I'm doing blends, I know Nate doesn't like this, so I'm saying something completely different from what Nate likes doing, but you'll find every digitizer is going to have personal preferences. So here, you can play with this by adding points to this line, moving it around. I like doing the auto as I'm playing with it so I can see real time what's happening to my blend. So this turns it into a custom, but it allows you to really, change how those threads are laying apart. Now, the blend, what that does is it adds a second color to it. So if I just click on another color now, you'll see now it's blending two colors rather than just one color with different densities. Okay, so that's what the blend is doing for you, is it's allowing a two-color blend of two different colors, and you can adjust again by playing with these, adjusting your densities, moving them around to get whatever look you want. You can always flip it too, which is just another way to get a different look to it. Okay. So, can the new DS open EMB files? Some of them. I'm not sure if it opens the brand new latest version of EMB. I'll have to get that info for you. Oh, so okay, so yeah, it can open up to version 1.8 of the EMBs, but anything past that, no. Okay, did I split my letter apart manually to add your blend? So for that color, for this example down here, for my color words, it was all digitized manually, so it was done based on vector art, and yes, it was all split manually. Particularly when you're doing this many colors, you've got to kind of do it in segments. So you're not going to do it as typed letter. It's literally going to be digitized as a bunch of fills going up and then overlapping to blend. All right, let's see. Any other questions typed in so far? Nope. All right. So let's see what other things I had sent in ahead of time. So we talked about the gradient. In the new document, it says updated embroidery file support. What does that mean? Well, so from when V10 was released to V11, of course, everyone's doing updates to all their competitor software and whatnot. So this is just supporting, new art files, new, the EMB up to 1.8, that sort of thing. So it's just supporting the newer file types, the DSTs, EXPs. Is there a second? So that's kind of what that means for you. Is there a document that describes how DS converts to other formats? No, the save as, and it will save off your DSTs. That's all kind of built into the code. So let's see, it looks like there's a new comment up here. Yep, DS11 will open art files. It will. Yep, so that's part of what was updated. All right, doing color gradients, it's really about playing with it. This is, you've got your red and dark and then in between. So if you, just like we did the rainbow on the word color, if you want to do a gradient across there, if you break it up into multiple colors and do the blend over top the segments, you can get a better blend than just doing a two-color blend. So by adding more colors, you'll get a better color gradient. And it really comes down to taking those threads out, finding the ones that will really subtly blend, and then making sure they overlap nicely. Okay. Is there a way in V10 or in V11 to print out colors used per design? Of course. So let's see. I guess I can do it with this one. File, print. And when you open it, V10 does this as well. It'll bring up it looks different in V10. So you can go print your different files and go through and tell it what's settings you want. So here under print options, you can tell it if you want the actual size, if you have notes within your file. But you'll see here what it gives you is it gives you active colors. So that is which colors were physically used in this file. Okay, so, or in the creation of it. So it might have been, you know, over here I can see it's 18 unique colors were used. But I can also tell it to do, it will also give me my color stitch out. So you can just play with all these different things, add different settings. You can type in your company name and brand it. It's a lot of good stuff. And it'll give you this cute little run sheet that you can use to show your clients. So here you can see page 2 is my color sequence. So while this had 18 colors, it's currently 21 color changes. Okay, so it gives you both unique colors and the color changes, and you can print that out, save it as a PDF. It's typically what I do rather than printing the actual paper. But if you want to use them to pin it and treat it as a worksheet, that works too. All right, let's see, what else do we have? I talked about these 3 presets. Oh, there was also a question about the, yesterday, the guys were telling you about the pull compensation for the alphabets. And so this question was, hey, does that pull comp only work with new alphabets, or does it work for all of them? It works for all the alphabets. So you can turn on that lettering compensation. And if you weren't here yesterday, I'll show you that. Lettering compensation is, again, in the properties under right here, lettering comp. Okay, so you can turn that on, and that will adjust any of the fonts, not just the newer ones. Okay, let's see, what else do we have? Could you demonstrate the primer stitch? Yeah, that's fun. I like it. So let me close my mess before I get lost in what I have open. All right, so I'm going to go open one of the stock designs that comes with it. So designs, let's try this boat. Yeah, let's do the boat. Okay, I've got a design, and it also works with text. I'll do that in a sec. So if you select it, up here under object, generate basting or primer stitch. So basting stitch has been something that I know I've seen in groups. It's been requested quite a bit. The basting is like if you're going to float a towel, a lot of people will want to tack it down to the stabilizer. So that's a basting stitch. It's just a outline that you're going to remove later. The primer stitch is this one. So you can select either or. So I'll just show you. You can change the properties here. So let's say you like a longer stitch length. 45 is actually pretty darn big, so I'll leave it there. Offset, let's say you want it closer to the design, something like 100 points. And say okay, and poof, now I have a basting stitch in my design. Well, what if I want, instead of a basting stitch, let's say I want to do the primer. Well, I come over here again, go object, generate basting or primer stitch, and change it to primer. You can change the properties, so if you want it closer to the design or further away from the design, you can change all those properties, but when you apply it, poof, now I've got me a click and done primer stitch. Okay, and what is a primer stitch good for? It's good for if you're dealing with fabrics that have a lot of texture to them, minky, fleece, things where, like if you're doing a monogram. Actually, let me do that real quick. So object, generate primer. Let's not do it as basting, let's do it a primer. Poof. All right, now I got a cute primer stitch around my lettering. So what is it good for? So that's going to, if I match that to the fabric, so let's say I'm going to put a name on a towel and I don't want the loops coming around it, well, I can do the primer stitch, match the color to the fabric itself, and there you go. It's now tacked down. You can still use solving and all that kind of stuff, but now that fur, you know, I always think of it as fur because I've done, you know, the stockings at Christmas time. I did a monogram once, and then as soon as it was done, it was like eaten by all the texture. So the underlay really, by doing this global underlay, this primer stitch, it really holds it all down so that you don't worry about that. Okay. Yeah, the auto primer is really cool. I know that I've got lots of videos that I've done on YouTube in the past showing how to do it manually, and it can be done. It's not the fastest, but man, look how quick that was. Poof and done. And let's say, even if you did another good use of this, even if you're not going to use the primer, let's say you just want to baste it. Yeah, okay. So here there was, all right, I'm jumping around. I'm sorry, I saw a question pop up. Hey, can you change this design to something else? Of course, it's a complex fill now, so I can go modify it. So I'm going to get rid of that one. So instead of having two, I'm just going to go to the properties here, and let's change it to a decorative. All right, probably don't want that one. Let's try the pebbles, because I like the pebbles. Or bubbles. That one's cute too. Nah, let's do pebbles. So you can use any of these decorative fills. Where are the pebbles? Helps if I go down to where the peas are, huh? All right, so yes, you can apply decorative stitches to that. You can do all kinds of fun things with the primer stitch. Now, what I was going to say before I got distracted with using decoratives is, let's say you're not even going to use the primer as a, that cross hatch or a different pattern underneath it. What would you might want to use it for? Well, you could still use it as a basting stitch. I know lots of, particularly if you're digitizing for home users that have the single needle machines, a lot of them like to float their designs. And when they float, you float a piece of fabric on top, it's not hooped well. And if it's not really tacked down, you can get shifting, which causes all kinds of problems with your embroidery. Well, in that case, come over here and you can, generate, instead of the primer stitch, do a basting stitch. And that way, it's going to hold it all down so that the fabric is tied to the stabilizer, giving you a better chance of having a nice, high quality embroidery, which is what we all want in the end, right? Let's see. Lori Evans said, any chance that when opening EXP files, it'll give us the actual colors instead of just the ones designed by DS? So EXP files that format is fixed. It's a heritage format, and it actually has no color information stored within it. So when you're opening it within DesignShop, there's nothing for the software to read to tell it what colors are there. So it's always going to default to random colors because that information is not in that actual file. The only files currently that use that save color information are going to be things like your OFMs, the Jeff files, art files, Huss files. There's a few others that save color information within it. But EXPs, DSTs, those do not. So they're always, when you open them, going to come up in all kinds of crazy colors. All right, any other? Let me quick scan before I jump back to my canned stuff. Okay, that's all answered. Nothing on YouTube. Hi there, Diane. In Michigan. It's cold everywhere but here, and I love it. Well, I love the warm. I hate cold. All right, let's see. Go through differences between DS 10 and 11. There's a lot of things have been done different. I know they covered the design checker, so that feature I'm really loving. So over here you can make it show up here. That's one way, or down here you can click on the checker under your project view. It changes it over to design checker view, and you can see all the things that are currently wrong with this. So it allows you to, rather than having to sew something out and then going, ugh, I wish I had have seen I didn't do an underlay on that, or oh, I forgot to put knots, or man, there's 7 layers of stitching on top of each other. It's so heavy. You can find all that ahead of time without having to sit there and just do test runs all the time. So the design checker is new, and it's really cool. I've got, personally, in my shop, I've had a whole lot less staring at the thing going, oops, I didn't fix that, because I'm doing it. I'm looking at it here quickly and not having to worry about it. Let's see. I love all the new fonts. There are, particularly with all the different characters. I don't know if you noticed in V10 before, these things that pop up, I call them code sheets, okay? And some of the old fonts you'll see don't have many characters like this, all right? So it's just a handful of characters, and you know, when you're doing stuff in different languages, it becomes challenging to say the least, because you've got to go digitize them all. Well, a lot of them have been updated to add all those Euro characters. So you've got the umlauts and the accents, all that kind of stuff. And you can see a ton of the fonts have it now. The decoratives and the improvements on all the decorative stitches. It's no mystery. I talk about them all the time in these things. Decoratives are by far some of my favorite stitches ever, just because of versatility, you know, how versatile it can be and all the different things you can do with it. You can add patterns, you can do different stitch directions on there. It's just so cool, the different stuff you can do, whether you're doing them as fills like this, or if you're using a decorative through these walks. So you can do decoratives and do really fun stuff, which, let me turn that on 3D, zoom in, you can see. You can do cool little braids and all these things with the decoratives, just quick. So in the past, you'd have to digitize each one of these, copy paste, move them around, or create your own decoratives. And there's just so many more neat ones on here that you can play with. There's these faux marrow stitch. So marrow stitches, if you're unfamiliar with them, is something that is done on patches. A lot of the patch shops, when you make a patch, they kind of sew it out, they'll cut it, and then they'll take it over to what's called a marrow machine, which does this different border around it. Well, now we've got all these faux marrow stitches built in that you can play with. There's even under the decorative shapes, let's see, faux marrow, different shapes already prepped for you with that marrow put in place. So if you're trying to make it look like it was done with the marrow machine, but on here, you just drop it up, and now I've got a patch. I can add whatever I want to it, add any additional steps I might need, and when this sews out, it is really rather striking on how nice it looks and how it looks like a marrow, right? Like it was generated by a marrow machine, but it was done on your embroidery machine, okay? So these decoratives and these pre-built shapes, if you've not played around with these, you know, look through them. There's a lot of cool stuff in here. You know, the different symbols, if you're doing trademarks and things like that, you know, different brands. There's a ton of monogram decorations, which are also really cool in these custom shapes. You know, you can just add them to your screen, modify them, and they're just fun. You know, you can really kind of, yeah, you can see I'm scrolling through. There's a ton of them. So all of these can be added. Let's see, what else is there? Yeah, so I love these. Oh, the character map, notice it's here. So in the past, when you're using fonts, you can also see them here. If you need the special characters, you can get them. You can also reach those within the text file. So let's say, all right, let me close some of my mess. I've made quite the mess here. All right, so let's do pretty. Oh, here, let me go open that. I actually made a file the other day called Pretty. So unimaginative. Let's see. All kinds of goofy right now, sorry. All right, so there's Pretty. So check this out. So this is a font that is, let's just regenerate this so you can see how I did it. So I typed Pretty, selected it, changed the font to, that's a script, I think it's Melody Script, yeah. Melody Script. Okay, cute, except I want the flourishes, they're pretty. I like them, can you tell? All right, so if I select the letter, all right, go into my properties here, I can change go to the character list. Let's go change it to Melody Script Flourish. Wait, am I not on the scripts? No, I'm in Serif. There's the scripts. I could just type it, but there you go. All right, and then check over here. This character list you can turn up, but I'm on the Y, so I'm gonna move it over, make it bigger so we can get them all. Where is it? There it is. So, oops, I didn't put it on the end. Let's put it on the end. There. Oop, I put the big Y. And then deleted other stuff. All right, that was not very effective. Let's try that again. This is what happens when you click too fast, and then, all right, so we put it back how it's supposed to be. There we go. And let's come over to the melody script, flourish, there. There are my characters, there's my Y. Okay, I changed them all to flourish because I didn't change over. But you can see what it will do. I'm being dumb, I'm sorry. All right, what other questions while I'm messing around doing silly things? You've got to select the letter that you're modifying and not all of them like I just did there. Okay. Flourish. Why? There. I added too many Y's, but you got the idea. Okay. All right. What other questions do we have now that I'm being silly? Please, we did that. All right. Oh, this one. Is there a shortcut for these manual kerning things? So if you're unfamiliar with that particular tool, what that does is it manually kerns between the letters. So let's say, just looking at this, I want more space between the P and the R. I can come over here and move it over a bunch. Okay, either way. So one kerns it one way. So you can see I added all those symbols in there. And just to be excessive, and you can see it shoved it away. So that's manual kerning. So F7 and F8, they still work, but you do them here. So let's say I write S, now I want my A to be closer. I could hit F7 a few times. If I want to spread it further apart, F8 a few times. Okay, so you can do it on the screen as you're typing, not within the text box. Okay. Let's see, what else do we have? So yeah, they work, those work 7 and 8, but it works as you're typing it in. Oh, this one. This has existed in 10 and 11. So how do you move designs without having to just drag it around by your mouse? All right, so let's say I want to move this around. Normally I drag it, but let's say you want to just move it over a little bit. Well, first you select what you want to move. Hold your shift key down and then move my arrows up, down, whichever direction you want. So shift or shift alt does a larger step. Okay. Shift control does even larger steps. See that? So those are your three choices. You hold shift and then you can either combine, leave it by itself, use your arrows. You can use shift control for a larger step, or you can use shift and alt for kind of an in-between, but shift by itself is like nudging. Okay, let's see. Is it possible to reduce the number of stitches in a corner where you can't use the corner tool? Yeah, there's different ways you can handle that. So you're trying to reduce the density of the stitching in this tiny area so it doesn't kind of bubble up. So when you're doing that, you can turn on short stitches. That's one way you can address it. You can digitize your own corners rather than using, like, let's say you want to do a miter. You would digitize it as 2 columns. So you'd got a column coming to a point, then start another one and do a column there. There's actually a really good video that Nate did that goes through all of that. So let me quick show you. I'm going to go to melcoservice.com. And for everyone wanting to learn and see how DS11 works, check this out. So if you go to DS11, click on the PDF. Okay, this is on Melco Service. This is the manual. All right. It's 224 pages or so. But here, what I want to show you is corners. So I'm just going to do Control F and search for corners. There. All right. But notice there are all kinds of embedded videos within the document. Yes, Keith, are these recorded? Yeah, they're always recorded. They're up on Facebook and they're up on YouTube, so you can find them in both places. But all these videos are embedded for each of the features. So in here, not only does he go about showing you how to use the corner tool, but he also goes over different ways you can deal with a corner without using the corners. So you can use a fill, add a splice line, add stitch directions. You can use a fill, change your stitch directions to give it a cap look, things like that. So you can see a lot of fun stuff in these different videos, but you'll notice there are videos embedded throughout this. So if I just scroll up, yeah, so there's another talking about compensation. There's a whole video on compensation, and they're pretty in depth. Okay, what else do we have? Is there a bean stitch option in decorative? No. Well, kind of. So if you go here, you've got a bean stitch. So a bean stitch is just a wider running stitch, essentially, right? So what the bean stitch does is, if I turn it into 3D, whatever number here is how many stitches it puts. So I get 3 pieces of thread for each location. It's great for outlining things, because you forward, back, forward. If you do a bean stitch of 3 with a retrace, it gives you 6 pieces of thread. You can be all kinds of silly and go all the way up to 13 and then double it for 26. I wouldn't recommend that, but you can do it. I usually kind of stick to 3 to 8 pieces of thread over one location at the most. That's just personal preference. The more you do, the bolder it ends up looking. Your decorative. Now, there are some fun things under decorative. For instance, I like the beans. They're pretty. I'm looking for, there's a chain like, yeah, chain like. There's things like this. So you can go change them to decoratives. Helps if I select it first. And then you've got chain stitches, chain like, and you can always modify this. So see this chain stitch? It's kind of large, right? But I can go into the properties and adjust it and play with the property. You know, maybe I want to leave that there and change the height to 50 to narrow it up some. So you can adjust all the properties of all your decoratives as well. They're good fun. Let's see, what else got typed? All right, I don't see any there. Let me jump up back to my questions. All right, so we talked about this. We talked about that one. I usually end up purchasing EXP designs and converting them to wireframe because I want to change something. Sometimes it works great. Other times it does different things. Is there a trick to converting? The trick to converting is convert the minimal amount that you need to. So if you notice, rather than clicking at the top, so let me go open a file and just do it so you can see. Okay, I'm trying to think, where do I have one saved? This is a OFM, I think, not an EXP. Yeah, this is already converted over. Well, for your expandeds, normally, you know, for any color, it's usually not just one expanded element here. It's a whole bunch of them. So what you want to do is go find the one that you want to modify, select it, right-click, operations, convert to wireframe. Don't convert the entire design, okay? It just adds more work for you to do. All right, what else do we have? Can you show how to change a word to a bean stitch or a chain stitch? Sure. All right, so one, you can just use the bean stitch font. So that's one option. So if I go to block, bean stitch, so that's one way, is just use the bean stitch font. Or let's say I want to leave it as, let's do block 2 because it's bold. I can hold my shift key down, click on my walk. Okay, so you can see now I have a red outline around there. And then let's change it to bean instead of walk. And then I'm going to get rid of the text that I used as my artwork, if you will. Okay. So that turns it there. You can also use these with the chain stitches or with the different ones in the decoratives rather than just using your bean stitch. So that's always an option. Okay, what other questions do we have? Let me scroll. Do I have to update the Melco OS to work with DS11? No. I mean, you can save off EXPs, DSTs, OFMs if you want. I don't know why you wouldn't want to update it for the compatibility stuff, but I guess that really is more if you're running other softwares. Okay, what other questions? I don't see any there. Can it be done as a single line center instead of an outline? Yeah, I'm trying to remember how to do that. I did it a while back. Let's see. Operations, change element type, bean. I don't remember how. Let me play with that and I'll get it back to you. Okay, so let me, because I think if I do this one and I replace it, it does the outline. There's a way where you have to select edge or center, but I think that's, you have to convert it over to columns first. I'll play with it and I'll do that again next time. I can't quite remember. I usually just plink around with that. All right. What is the cost for the updates? I have no idea. I know if you've got relatively new software within the last few months, you should have gotten an email about it already. If depending on what level of software, what version you have, the easiest thing is to get in touch with your salesperson and they'll tell you right up front, because maybe you had DesignShop Lite and it makes more sense now for you to go instead of from size or from lettering, maybe you want to go up to vector. So it just depends on what you have and what you want to go to. So having a quick conversation with your sales guy is probably the way to go. Yeah. All right. What other questions? Any? So remember, you can type in your questions. You can email them to applications@melco.com. You can type them in on these feeds. We're going to be doing these on a pretty regular basis. The Design Shop Talks, we're going to do them every week. Next week will be on Friday. I rotate every other week, Thursday, Friday, every other week. So, and then of course we've got our Wednesday sessions and all the other lives that we do throughout the week to kind of, want you guys to be successful and happy and be able to quickly digitize and do your embroidery so your customers are all happy. That's my goal anyway with my customers. So, any other questions, you guys? Otherwise, I'm going to call it a day. Been at it for a little while. And, if you have specific things you want to see, I know I kind of, what I'm thinking about doing is just picking a feature to include in a demo of at all the different, at the Design Shop Talks, just picking a feature and demoing it so that you can see a different feature every week. But, let me know what you want to see and we'll see what we can do about it. All right. Well, you guys have a fantastic week. Try to stay warm, and I will be back next Friday. All right. Have fun. Happy digitizing. Where's my screen? There it is. Bye, guys. Hope these are helpful.